I mean, who am I to try to invest in others? I'm a disaster. I'm a mess. Who am I to think that I could actually impact other people? Who am I? I can't even keep God happy with my own good works and my own good life. And to those lies, the apostle says, grace. Grace. Grace is the first word of the book and the last word of the book. It's always that way in Paul's writing. After it gets past the pleasantries in verse 1, in verse 2, he says, grace, mercy, and peace. And then the last verse of the book, Paul says, grace be with you. Grace is God's favor given to us apart from anything we've done, his unconditional acceptance of us apart from our spiritual performance. And Paul says, Timothy, I have to remind you, I know you're a pastor. I know you are in a hard place. I know you have been called and equipped. I have helped prepare you. You're ready. But you need to be reminded, even though you're going to be forever remembered. You're in the Bible, Timothy. I need to tell you again, grace. Grace. I need to remind you of basics because grace is the source of our salvation. And I love in verse 2, he says mercy and peace because mercy is the environment of our salvation that we constantly are blowing it, but God has given us mercy. And then peace is the result of our salvation. And what this church is experiencing is what many of you are experiencing, and that is the opposite of peace, which is just, I got to keep God happy and please Him with everything I do. And if I'm not perfect in my faith, God doesn't love me, and I cannot possibly love anybody else. I base my relationship with God on what I do, and I'm not doing so well. And so certainly God's mad at me, and there's no way anybody can benefit from me. Those are lies. Those are lies. And so Paul is saying, listen, I want to remind you of grace. Verse 11. In accordance with the gospel of the glory of the blessed God with which I have been entrusted. He's saying the glorious gospel that God comes and loves us in spite of us, that God uses ordinary people to do extraordinary things. Timothy, I'm writing to remind you of that. I want you to feel grace. I want you to sense the forgiving nature of grace. I want you to sense the empowering nature of grace because you've got to do a lot of hard stuff. And I want you to sense the gifting of grace because you have what it takes to do what I've called you to do. So we are Timothy, friends. So I'm not a pastor. No. Maybe not of a local congregation, but probably you are the pastor at your job. Meaning, you're the tallest jockey, right? There's no other Christians. You're it, right? Maybe it's your neighborhood. Maybe it's your family. See, God wants to use you. He wants you to invest in other people. And a lot of you are going, well, I've never had anybody invest in me. I understand that. Don't let that stop you from investing in other people. Don't let that stop you from seeking other people to invest in you. Don't just say, well, the church isn't doing it for me. Be relentless in finding people to love and minister to you. And then as you're working that out and as you're trying to develop that or as you're experiencing that, go and love other people. This is what it means to soar as a Christian. And how we get there, it's law, I'm imperfect, then gospel. Jesus is perfect, and He makes me perfect. It's law, then gospel. This is the balance. This is the two-step of the Christian life. This is the way we constantly come back to the law to show us we need Jesus. We depend on Jesus. We trust Him, and then we fail to trust Him. Then we go back and wait a minute, I'm not serving God, but He loves me just in spite of me. This is the dance. These are the things we bounce between. This is the key to the Christian life. This is what we're going to unpack as we study this book. I'll leave you with a quote. I love it. Nobody knows who it's really for. There's a lot of debate. It's even better that it's kind of anonymous. It's written to or about a person named John. I think he's writing it for himself. Run, John, run, it says, the law commands, but gives neither feet nor hands. Far better news the gospel brings. It bids us fly and gives us wings. Paul's saying to Timothy, I want you to soar. God's saying to us, I want you to soar. You're not going to get there with a mystical experience that enables you to escape the big bad world. You're not going to get there because you're perfect in your obedience. You're going to get there when you understand, see, adore, worship, and serve Jesus